Hi, my name is Dyandria, and welcome to Dyandria, the Real News. The reason we refer to this program as the Real News is we don't edit out the facts and the truth, as does Channel 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, CNN, and all other news stations. Those stations are run by corporations, major corporations that don't want you to know the truth.
Go fast. PAS. The comments, PAS theory is junk. By the way, I can only give you the sound bites. There are articles that these sound bites came from. PAS theory is junk science that Dr. Richard Gardner invented, a concept and talked at as if it were proven science. It is not. This is Dr. Paul Fink, past president of the American Psychiatric Association. Next. PAS is not research-based, and it has done a great injustice to the family and the justice system. The criteria that Dr. Gardner had developed are virtually useless. He operates on the premise that if you say a lie often enough, people will believe it. Dr. John Conte. And folks, these names are highly reputable, respected names. Their research is peer-reviewed. Next. Eli Neuberger from Harvard. PAS is an atrocious theory with no science to back it up. Next. It is not helpful for the community to be hoodwinked by information that's not rigorously tested. And then if that is still enough, if there are any judges in the audience, and when I tell judges, if this is not enough for you, your own National Council of Juvenile Court Judges has a volume called Navigating Custody and Visitation Evaluations in Cases with Domestic Violence, a judge's guide, and it's written by Claire Dalton, Leslie McDragle, and the Honorable Francis F. Wong from Hawaii. This is the juvenile court's official position, the National Family of Juvenile Courts, and they say, Richard Gardner's theory, positing the existence of a parental alienation syndrome, or PAS, has been totally discredited by the scientific community. Testimony that a party to a custody case suffers from a syndrome should therefore be ruled inadmissible, both under the standard established by Dober and the stricter Fry standard. You should not admit it in evidence as court, and I ask every single judge who has used this, where is your evidence to refute this? Show me your studies to refute this. Show me your experts to refute, because it doesn't exist. And yet you perpetuate. We got 5 minutes, wow. How much, and this is the leading study of the sexual abuse of the national study, you really have to go into it, characteristics, and this showed that approximately 26% of boys, 26% of women, 16% of boys had been sexually abused as youths. Now, Dr. Paul Fink, who co-authored that article with me, wrote, and this was furnished to me by the Leadership Council, he says, if sexual abuse were a newly discovered disease, a disease that affects up to 20% of women and 10% of men, a disease that costs society over $24 billion a year, what do you think that would response would be? And yesterday somebody said it correct. When it's a stranger, you have no problem at all prosecuting them. When it's people of influence, it's another story, and especially when it's a spouse, then it's another story. Who commits child sexual abuse? Everybody, every race and so forth. But folks, if there's ever the stereotypical case that comes from my experience, I don't like to give anecdotal, except I've been involved, folks. Remember, I was a social worker first in New Orleans Juvenile Court. And I went to law school, and then at night, and then I was attorney for Child Protective Services. Then I was a juvenile court judge. Then I'm now Court of Appeal judge, only retired last month. That encompasses 48 years, and I've dealt with well over 2,000 cases of allegations of child sexual abuse. Then that's a conservative estimate in the 48 years. And who does it? Everybody. But what is the case? And I read this once, and my experience certainly validates it. I think 2,000 is a pretty big sample. Who do I see the most? In the public, I see white, middle class, better than average income, better than average educated, often a pillar of the community. Raise your hand who has encountered such a person in child sexual abuse? A lot. Okay, the nature and extent, all right, now, and then the next issue is just, oh yeah, we just referred to that, but I'm a judge. I wanted verification. So here's a letter from the authors of that study by Thones and Pearson. It says, yeah, that's what the study said. Here's a letter to back it up. And then now, how many false allegations? This is what they're always saying. The tremendous study was done in 1990. Are we up to that one? How many times false allegations? And this study, look who did it. The Association of Conciliation Courts, a national organization, a court organization, did a study of over 9,000 cases of contested custody cases. And they're saying you always raise sexual abuse. It's the atomic bomb whenever there's custody cases. The accusations, and this is just you really need time to go into this study because it's monumental. And all of us involved in this field know about this study. All of us involved. And it involved 9,000 cases in 12 states, 12 courts, in-depth interview, in-depth studies, and in 2% of the cases were there allegations. Now these are contested. You're fighting for custody. How many times did they allege child sexual abuse? Only 2%. That means 180 times. Now, mothers only made this accusation against fathers in 48% of that. That means 86 cases. So there's 2%, there's 180 cases. Mothers made accusations in 86 cases. Then, how many were intentionally false? It says 5 to 8%. Intentionally false. So if I take the 8% figure, that comes to 7 cases. Intentionally false statements made by mothers was 7 times out of 9,000. You show me anything at law that doesn't have a much higher rate of false accusations. If I'm suing you for anything that comes in law, that's the least I've ever seen in any area. But when I was a juvenile court judge, one of my policies was I was very tough with delinquents because I wanted them to be afraid of me. I'm trying to keep them out of the state school. I don't want to send the wrong kid to be tougher and meaner than he was before and create a criminal. So I took, but never with a neglected and abused kids. I met him in chambers first, accompanied by a social worker and accompanied by attorneys of both sides, attorneys from both sides. And one guy said, the father has a right to be there. I said, the hell he does. I said, he can come see me alone. He wants to meet me, that's fine. You could come with him. I said, I'll see him alone. I'll see anybody alone, but he's not going to see the kid alone. I said, I'm going to do that, and the attorneys are going to be there. And then, so this little child is there to show you sometimes you can get wrong information from children. I know, I'm winding up. To show you that you can get wrong information. So I have this little girl. She was bright. Richard Ducote's not here. This was his case. She was very, very bright, and she'd been, we suspected. No, I'm not going to talk anything about the case. I have the social worker there, and I had 2 lawyers there. And I show them the picture of my kids and my 2 dogs, and I show them the robes I'm going to wear. And I said, now when you go inside, it's going to be very different. I don't want you to be scared. You're going to see me with a robe. You're going to see me high, looking down at you. You know how frightening that is for a kid? You're going to see 2 stairs, and you're going to see a man with a gun. She said, and I called him in. I called my bailiff in, and I said, this is going to be there. And why do I need him? I said, to protect you. So nothing can happen to you. Afterwards, she told, so the social worker came back and told me, she said, to show you that kids can misinterpret, you can get erroneous. The judge said that in court, she was 8 years old, in court, the judge said that if my daddy tried to touch me, he was going to shoot him.
Dyandria?
Hi. One thing I wanted to do is reiterate what Wendy had said about venting. At first she was afraid to vent. I guess she must have felt it was like a weakness. It's not only the opposite, it's invaluable for preventing any kind of mental disorder. It's very important to vent, whether you can use vigorous exercise, jogging, singing, screaming even. But whatever it is, do it. Don't form a lot of hate in you because you shouldn't. Just use your intelligence. Use your intelligence and your drive to focus on getting what you want. This panel is supposed to be about activism. What happened to me when I started to see that the system was extremely corrupt, I ran to the media. The media says to me on every level, Channel 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 2020 and 48 hours, they said, oh, we know that's going on, but we don't do those kind of stories. So immediately I said, what? They know it's going on, but they don't do those stories, so nobody knows it's going out there. So I mentioned that to a very intellectual friend of mine, and she says, well, why don't you become the media? I said, well, I'm just a housewife. I mean, how do I do this? So step by step, I got together a cable television program back in 1997. I wrote a book. I made sure I organized, at that time I had websites. I organized protests. As a matter of fact, the first protest ever, and it's also unfortunately been the last, against children's services across the United States of America. It was in Washington, D.C. in 1998. And I became hated. Not by people like you, but judges, lawyers, everybody for the system. I mean, if you ask anybody about Dyandria, oh, she's bad. You know, they don't, crazy. She's paranoid, delusional. She thinks that the system's corrupt, and she goes on television saying crazy things. Anyway, of course, I have all the documented evidence. Exposure is invaluable. I joined the organization VOW as soon as I got out of jail, and I've been I have to get my life back together, so it's a new thing for me. I'm like a baby out of water, And we started right away doing protests and, passing out flyers. And I went to Suffolk County Community College and I took a course in domestic violence so I could better understand it, the roots, etc. But I learned everything when I went to that course. I got 6 credits, by the way, for it. I already learned everything from the organization VOW, so I could have taught the course. Let's see, I equate the evil to cockroaches. When you shine, no, this is very serious stuff here, no laughter. When you shine the light on them, they all scatter. And that's why I say, and I'm sure my colleagues will agree with me, but you have no idea how important media is. I didn't commit a crime. I went to jail for 3 years because I was exposing them and they were angry. That means I did a good job. And that means that can you imagine, well, I know Eileen King and Monica Getz and and my favorite lawyer in the whole world who is in here. Oh, God, I love her. There she is standing over there. Stand up. Oh, don't look around.
Yeah. Robin Yeaman.
And Mr. Holden sitting right next to her, my 2 favorite lawyers in the world. I know they all agree with me, because if each and every individual here did what I'm doing, I mean, you don't have to go to write a book because that gets expensive, but you could go on television, and there's ways of doing it for virtually no cost at all.
Dyandria, would you be willing to talk to some people?
Absolutely.
After this? Everyone on here will be willing to answer your questions, and we're going to have a breakout session after this. I do know that Robin, we didn't have Robin up here, but she's got a CD, 2 CDs, yes, that talk about, she's activist extraordinaire. She will teach you how to find each other. She will teach you how to organize. She will teach you what to do. Go talk to her. There's also, I know, people from the Northeast, from New England, are looking for other people from New England. So if you want to meet with the New England people, might want to meet out by the table briefly after this session just to touch on each other. I know that they are looking, Cecilia, they want to be active. They're looking for other moms. But just stay together, okay? Stay together and we'll get there. Thank you.
Couple of things, just a couple of things. Something she said triggered what you need to hear, all of you. Don't ever go to court alone. Even if you're pro se, bring a witness, bring the most powerful person you can find in your community. She went to jail only when she was too considerate. She said, oh, you're so busy, I didn't want to call you about my court case. We had gone each and every court case. They never dared put her in jail. The one time she didn't tell us that she was going, boom, 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 they threw her in jail.
That's true.
So never go to court alone. If you want, this lawyer's lawyer sitting in the back there, she made a tape that is fabulous, Trial in a Box. And she has many other tapes. We're selling it, she's selling it. It is worth every single penny. Consider what you're spending on lawyers. And here you have how to organize. It is the most amazing thing. So you have the resources within this Battered Women's Conference of doing what you need to do to locally start whatever you need to start to make this a national movement. And that's the goal.
Thank you. Thank you to this wonderful panel.
One last thing I just want to mention. Please, every time you want to report somebody or you're passing out flyers, name the names. It's always important. Every corrupt judge, every corrupt law guardian, don't be afraid. Name their names.
All right. Speaking of jail, by the way, Dyandria was actually one of the original recipients of the Woman of Valor Award, and her plaque during our session, it somehow flew the coop. I don't know where it was, got separated, you know. So I want to award this, not posthumously, just a little bit delayed, the Woman of Valor Award to Dyandria Darrell.
there are organizations who are out there and advocates who are supporting each other. I'm more action-oriented, and I can't settle down, and it's the only way I think that I can even find healing, even though you can't be healed until you're on the other side of the fence. It's a way of keeping me going, is doing something. And mothers are never prepared for their children to disclose sexual abuse. And when my children disclosed, I didn't want to believe it, but I didn't know what to do either. And I was in the midst of a divorce, and the children had only that 1 week begun to see their father alone when we had separated, and that's when they came home, and one of them was in serious pain, and she was quite inflamed in her vaginal area. And so when you start going through the battles, it's number one, you don't know what to do. I turned to my attorney, and I was given very, very bad advice. I turned to the courts through my attorney, and I found that the more my children disclosed, the more the court didn't want to believe that my children had been abused. They believed their father instead, and they took the children away from me totally. It's been 4 years and 3 months since I've even seen my children.
There is always the dilemma as to whether this is child abuse is an actual event as being reported by the mother. So on the one hand, if the mother allows it, they'll say, well, she is a neglectful mother and take the child away because you neglected to protect. And on the other hand, all too often, the mother says, especially after a divorce, a separation or a divorce, where the mother is now able to see things that she didn't realize that were going on, like child sexual abuse, on behalf of the perpetrated by the ex-husband. Now she's able to see these symptoms.
Well, clearly my daughter has been abused, and it's all documented, and she wrote a lot of letters to the judge by herself and tell the abuse, and the judge, actually that made the judge very upset, and the judge thought that my daughter directly challenged him. So he not only gave the sole custody to my ex-husband, also put me back to supervise the visitation 4 hours every other, once a month. And after that, I just collapsed, and I just couldn't hold together, even though I know I have all the truth, and but just too overwhelmed.
My sister has been extremely, extremely heartbroken over this matter. The fact that she's been taken away from her family. She's always been there to see the conflict between my parents. She's always been there to see the abuse that my father has really subjected his family to. So she's always been there first-handedly seeing what's going on. It's tragic, I'd say, that she is forced to go live with the same person she suffered at the hands of.
I told my daughter that she was gonna stay with Dad and only come back on a weekend to see Mom and her brother, and she was just devastated. And she also, at that point, reviewed to her therapist that her father molested her for probably 4 or 5 years. He'd been tug her every night, and she said that's when did that happen for all these years. So I called CPS, and the therapist of my daughter called CPS. I filed a report to the police department. Then we filed a reconsideration with this new evidence.
That if he is in fact molesting her, and she's having all this upset, and she's pulling out of her eyebrows, and she doesn't know what to do because she's lived with him in the past and has seen his violence, that when he tells her he's going to be getting custody of her, she finally reveals what he has been doing to her. And the response to that is for her to be given to him and completely separated from her mother, completely. Birthday, Christmas, no contact whatsoever, to be isolated from her brother, And his motivation is clear. He has got to keep her quiet. And that's what this is all about.
There is no change of circumstances presented in the current motion. In effect, this is a second bite of the apple.
Commissioner basically said the sexual abuse allegation is suspicious because the time-wise, and why didn't the child review this before?
The motion is denied.
There are quite a number of cases in which a battering man also sexually abuses children. There's a high overlap between domestic violence perpetration and incest perpetration, statistically speaking. And I've seen the anguish of mothers whose children are being sexually abused and where the court refused to permit her to protect her children.
My daughter called me the first night after she went to her father's house. She talked to me 5 times on her cellular phone.
Nadia, sweetie, give me some time, okay? Give me some time. I need some time to have a look. Today, Nadia, today, okay? Are they threatening you on anything? No, get me out today. Okay, Nadia, hang on there. Hang on there, okay, Nadia? Let me work on it, okay? What? I can't hear you. Talk a little louder. You don't care you gotta bring your where? I don't care. I just break the law. Just get me out. Okay, Tanya, just listen. Hang on there now. Don't go anywhere, okay? Hang on there, sweetie. Just give me some time to work it, okay? Get me out. Get me out. I love you, sweetie. I'm working you out there. Okay, Manya, hang on there. You're fine, Manya. You know what, Manya? I know you're not fine. But, Manya, deep breath.
What is worse than a man raping his child? There is something much worse. It's a city government protecting the child rapist. This includes many judges from the Queens County Supreme Court, many judges from the Manhattan Family Court, including the administrative judge from the Manhattan Family Court who is well aware of this case and allowed this to happen. City officials from the Administration for Children's Services, and maybe soon even Child Protective Services out in Suffolk County, Long Island. There are many judges involved in this case, covering up for the retired cop who has engaged in sexual intercourse and is still engaging in sexual intercourse with his daughter. And again, I say this because every professional I have spoken to has said that pedophilia is not curable.